month will be on YouTube. All right, all right. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Marlon Weems, publisher of the Journeyman newsletter, and I'm here with my good friend Arturo Dominguez, publisher of Decolonized Journalism, and welcome to a show with no name. How you doing, Arturo?
Man, pretty good. Trying to enjoy the new year.
Yeah.
All the kids just went back to school, so the grandkids are coming over for dinner, but aside from that, they're mostly gone because they weren't on vacation. So
Man.
yeah, it's kind of quiet, mellow now.
Well, as you know, I had a kind of unusual holiday. I bet I visited more doctor. I've had more doctor's appointments in the last in the last month than I've had in the last 3 years. But when you get old and clumsy and start breaking bones and stuff, what are you gonna do? But
Yeah, I'm like a
I
random
know, I know, right? So I guess I'm gonna have to start wearing some of those old man shoes. Yeah, those old ugly black shoes you see dudes wear. No, I'm just joking. I'm willing to sacrifice my body to just be able to wear Nikes. Anyway, a lot going on. Man, this weekend, I guess we're the bad guys now. We're invading countries and snatching presidents. Why don't you just kind of I have a take on this that is a little different than sort of the narrative that, the we want the oil narrative. I mean, Trump does because he's just that kind of guy, but I'm not so sure that's ultimately what's behind this. But why don't you kind of give us just sort of the top line of how you see it?
Well, I mean, I've always seen it as more than an oil thing. There's a lot of resources. It's a resource rich country. A
Hmm.
lot of gold, some of the largest gold deposits in the world. There's a lot of things, a lot of fresh water, data centers and stuff, which Maria Corina Machado kept bringing up, and I
Oh yeah.
assume that's why I assume that's why they keep talking about fresh water because over the last few years you've heard, the heads of Southern Command mention how like a third of the world's fresh water is in Latin America, and I was like, when did water start getting into the equation? And it didn't take long to draw the connection.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's also about control, right? It's about dominion. Um, when I did a thing about Marco Rubio's, statements lately over the last few days about Venezuela, and it's hard not to draw the connections from like, manifest destiny to the
Imperialism,
Mon-
straight up.
right to the Monroe Doctrine to all that, and like, when you look at manifest destiny, the divine providence that God willed on everybody, on white people to colonize the Americas. That's Christian nationalism, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and we're back to that. We're back to seeking dominion over other people. White people are claimed to be the saviors. Well, not all white people, but obviously the
Well,
racist
sure,
white
right.
people, claim to be the savior. The savages don't know how to govern themselves. You know, that kind of stuff.
Well, he literally is framing it like he's doing a favor to the folk, the people of Venezuela. So there is so much to unpack, but I'm gonna give you a slightly different take on it, and it's really kind of in the category of both things can be true. Um, as you know, I talked to a lot of guys that I used to work with when I was in New York on the trading desk. Um, uh, Two or three of them, I mean, literally at least once a week. And, we're text messaging back and forth and all that stuff. One of the guys I spoke to for about an hour this weekend, he's still in New York. He's not directly in the business, but without giving away too much, he's a, C level officer at a company that's ultimately probably going to go public. So he's really tied in with a lot of the banking, investment banking community. What people don't realize is these investment banks, they hire national security experts, CI. folks. So they have, um, whole areas that are basically on the level of what Washington has. Maybe not as many people, but certainly with with the capability just to sort of look at the big picture. What I'm hearing from this guy, and it makes so much sense to me, is that keep in mind tomorrow we might have a ruling from the Supreme Court on tariffs where all that stuff may go away. But normally, tariffs, it's sort of one offs. You just hit one country here and there, and it's really not a country. You're really hitting a product, maybe it's steel or aluminum or whatever. Right. But and usually that strengthens the dollar, historically. The way Trump has done this is just the opposite of that. And the part of the fallout has been weakening the dollar, which kind of has given an advantage and emboldened China, the BRICS. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And you started seeing a lot of non-dollar trading in oil. Um, I'm sure you noticed this. The day that we attacked Venezuela, literally a few hours before that, in Caracas, there was a Chinese envoy there, and they were trying to cut a deal. I'm hearing that this is beyond the White House. This is literally like the folks in the background pulling Trump strings and everybody else's. They just weren't going to have a situation that gave China that much influence in this hemisphere. Not so much for oil, because when you really get down to it, yes, Venezuela has enormous proven reserves, but that's not the same thing as production. They don't really account for, just in terms of global production, they don't really account for that much right now. They have in the past, but now, and they don't have the infrastructure and all of that stuff. So I'm actually writing something up on this, and it really kind of gets into some historical precedents. I don't think a lot of people understand, or maybe even are aware of the dollar in terms of the importance as the reserve currency. And that's something that came out, Bretton Woods after World War II. So I'm going to kind of try to describe this, how we got in the position we're in. But I think one of the it's not getting talked about a lot, but one of the sort of consequences of tariffs is it has gotten to the point now where the dollar's supremacy as the reserve currency has has been threatened. And so this was almost kind of like it was a gangster move, to be sure, but I think in part it was directed at our allies, because we start seeing, think about it. I think France did something in what, Syria, I think it was. So you got people, because they're so uncertain about the relationship with us now, because we got crazy people in there. So folks are trying to cut their own side deals. Everybody's grabbing, trying to make, resources grabs. And I think that's a lot of it. And I'm not even so sure at the end of the day it's about oil, because let's face it, if all these oil companies jumped up right now and said, fine, we're going in, first of all, we're going to have boots on the ground. There's just no way that Mobil or Exxon Mobil or any oil company of any importance is going to go into Venezuela just because Trump said so, right? Without any kind of security. Let's assume all that took place. It would take 3 years for them to really get anything out of there, because the infrastructure just isn't there.
Yeah, I heard as many, more like 10 years before you
Oh,
start.
I mean, I can believe it. It just depends. Here's the other thing. Trump was talking about, he positioned this. I saw that. I watched the press conference, folks, so y'all didn't have to. It's just, man, he's just so unintelligent. And I think what they do with this guy is just give him some buzzwords to repeat.
Yeah.
And it was oil, it was, because I don't think he can really if this would have been Obama, I feel like even if we didn't agree with it, he and even even heck, George W. Bush, any of these guys could have articulated, well, here's why we did it. It's national security importance because of X, Y, and Z. And we would have said, oh, you know what, this is fucked up. But okay, I at least understand the rationale. But he was saying one thing, and then Marco Rubio standing right next to him saying something else. They're not really equipped to deliver a message of any kind of you know, congruity, right? And so I think a lot of what's really going on is just kind of getting lost because we got dumbasses in the White House, and all they know is money, oil, and let's attack somebody, and they get off on that, you know. So, but the idea though that crew is going to run anything, they can't even run the country they're in that they're supposed to be responsible for.
Right, and that a lot of that narrative, you're seeing that in the media too, right? There, everybody's talking about what are our next steps? What do we do next? Does Donald Trump have a plan? Has anybody asked the 30 million Venezuelans in Venezuela? Because I haven't seen anybody talking to them, and I assure you that people who are like I say this all the time, who are as nationalist as we are about their independence, are not going to accept being controlled by anyone in the White House.
There's
I mean,
no
they
way.
want their
I
they
mean,
want their money.
you think Iraq was bad?
Right.
Huh.
I mean,
I
Donald
mean,
Trump up front, up front, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, all weekend, even yesterday, keeps talking about this 30 to 50 million barrels of oil that we're just going to take and then sell at the market on the market at market value for payment. Payment for what? Like, you think Venezuelans are just going to give up 50 million barrels of oil without any discussion? I mean, let's be realistic here.
they're dreaming, dude.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I feel like they already know they fucked up. To be honest with you, I feel like they already know. And the thing that is interesting to me is this: the the payment is supposed to be, because he kept saying that we had been wronged in some way by Chavez and then, by extension, Maduro throwing all of the companies, the oil companies out. How many years ago was that? That was in the 70s. Am I right?
Well,
Or early
76,
80s?
76 Venezuela nationalized their oil. They bought all the oil stuff. They paid $2 billion, which was crazy money back then. And then when Chavez came
So
in,
wait, they paid that money to the oil companies?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
And even then, the oil companies were upset because they felt like they should retain some royalties on the oil and gain money off the future profits.
Hmm.
Venezuela's like, yeah, no, we paid enough. When Chavez came in, he ended a bunch of lease agreements that the oil companies had. And when Donald Trump says they stole our land, that's what he's talking about. It was they were leasing the land. They weren't.
Here's the thing though. So we're talking about 76 to now. What's that? 40 years? These oil companies have written those losses off long ago, dude.
Right.
They've written that off. So what are they supposed now they're going to have to undo the write off that they took and got tax breaks on.
Right.
I mean, come on. So what frustrates me is this. Where's the media on this? This is simple stuff. This is simple.
That-
I guarantee you, because I think some of these, at least a couple of oil companies have won some lawsuits, right? That say, I don't know, they're owed in damages $1 billion, whatever it is. They've already taken, they've already taken the write down on this.
Yeah. I mean, the U.S. after they tried to install Guaido, the U.S. seized like almost $5 billion worth of gold from a UK bank, and the UK courts helped the US do this. And then they also seized Citgo and gave it to Juan Guaido, who bankrupted it. So like, at what point? How many more reparations do these rich white people need? Like, come on. So
Kind of funny how they like reparations now, right?
right, right, right. And then the media is as complicit as the White House is because they're carrying the narrative of essentially ownership of the oil, the resources of Venezuela as a country. And, nobody's asking these kind of questions. To go back to also the strategic part about China, China's invested in Venezuela at like 160 something billion dollars.
Well, yeah,
And
in terms of debt, right?
yeah, well, no,
Well, no, no,
they're
they've
invested in infrastructure. Like
right,
China
right.
has in Lake Maracaibo, China has a drilling rig in there in the middle of that sucker.
Hmm.
And they drill oil from there. So, China has investments in Venezuela that are pretty extensive. And that meeting that occurred was over 2 days right before Maduro was kidnapped. And they were discussing up to like 200 different economic and trade deals between the two countries and, what China was willing to accept, not accept. Venezuela, same thing. And then, yeah, I don't know how far that goes now, because I mean, the Venezuelan government's still intact, right? Venezuela did not fall. They
Well,
they
that's
just
the craziest. I mean, this is the craziest nation building strategy I've ever seen. I mean,
yeah,
so you're saying these people are corrupt, they're drug dealers, etc. And it would be like, okay, you got Gotti, but you left Sammy the Bull in
right,
charge.
right.
So I don't really understand. I did hear today that one of the reasons, um, that Machado sort of got, dissed, for lack of a better word, is that the military wasn't really behind her. So they felt like, at least we got stability and we'll just put the thumb screws to the folks that are left to just kind of do what we want. But there's no way you can tell this story without it being just an illegal, sort of gangster diplomacy kind of story.
And
Because
like
it's
how
just every way you look at it, it's illegal.
right, and how democratic is it really, right? So you have a government there right now with hundreds of elected officials in the state legislature, mayors, all that, all the way down.
Okay.
Uh, what are we just supposed to throw all them out? I mean, they were elected by the people. You're just going to say,
Hmm.
no, this is our new government. When Marco Rubio was asked over the weekend about Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez, who
Right.
everybody with Marco Rubio was
So
saying,
let's stop right there because somebody made the comment that Machado's a fascist. She might be one, but
yes,
my understanding is that her opposition party actually won the election. Now you tell me what you think about it. That's
I,
I'm hearing it. I will be honest, I am no expert on Venezuelan politics and as I've talked about before, when Machado won the Peace Prize, I was laughing and then you had to school me on it, because I just didn't really understand what was going on. So my understanding is that she basically has been banned from running again for a variety of reasons. And you can maybe elucidate everybody or expand on that. But she backed, the guy who ultimately won. And I keep hearing that she or that the opposition party got like 70% of the vote. Now, maybe both sides are cheating. I don't know. But if
I
that's
mean,
the
I think.
case, the people may want her, but maybe the institution doesn't want her. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, I don't know. I did the analysis on that data. It's still up. It's still public. I did worked on it for 2 months. I found a lot of forgeries. I found, something like out of the 20 something or several thousand, 10, 12,000. I don't even remember the number anymore. Something like 90% of them didn't have the thumbprint certification, didn't have the pen signature. So
So were
telling
we
you,
trying to fix that election and Maduro just
I mean, like,
basically beat us at our own game? I mean, what?
here's the thing, like, okay, so Maduro and them, their side didn't release precinct level data, so I nobody has anything to compare to in that regard, and that's where the questions remain for me. There were 10 candidates in that election.
Okay.
9 of the 10 candidates certified that election that Maduro won with almost 52% of the vote.
Hmm.
The one party that didn't was Machado's party, who refused to participate in the election audit. Each candidate is able to audit the results on their own, and the results they came up with all matched. So while I personally can't make a decision on whether who won, who didn't, I'm kind of leaning towards maybe we did have something to do with messing with that election. We saw it
I
three
mean,
times.
it's Latin America. It would not be the first time.
We saw it three times this year: Honduras, Chile, and Bolivia. Donald Trump and the White House were threatening to put a ban on remittances, where families can send money back home. If they didn't elect the far right candidate, like there was panic all over these countries because of
Hmm.
the rhetoric coming out of the White House. And then, the other thing is Machado polls really low in Venezuela, and her party is a
So,
far
so
right
why
party.
is our media,
They picked her as a darling. I
dude?
don't know what.
It's really gotten it's beyond pathetic. And I kind of force myself to listen to, you know, Katie Tur and like daytime MS Now, which
Yeah.
is I won't say it's conservative, but it's not aggressively, to the left. It's like they try to be what they think is middle, what they think we think is middle of the road. But I just hear a lot of not lying, but just it's almost like local news how they get a police incident report and they just read it like it's news. That's the kind I don't hear a whole lot of where they're really trying to just unpack what's really happening.
Right, right. And it's crazy because, Venezuela, like I said, they nationalized their oil in 76. They've been a leftist country for a long
A
time.
long time.
Fought off dictatorships, fought off all kinds of stuff. It's just hard to believe that there's going to be support for any kind of far right ideas. Machado wants to nationalize everything. She wants to privatize everything. So right now, for example, you can ride a subway in Caracas for about 50 cents because there's no profit per motive in there. You're just paying for the maintenance of the system to keep it going. They have gondolas for people who live in the mountains, so they can go in the city, buy groceries, ride the gondola back home up in the mountains instead of,
Nice.
taking a mule or having to walk. And those are free. Those are free. When you say you want to, healthcare free, granted, it needs serious help. And I'm not trying to say Venezuela is this ideal utopia, but it's not this backward country. Like you look at Maracaibo, you look at Caracas, you look at these cities, especially at night, they're amazing. They're beautiful, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's not a perfect society. Inflation's still out of control. They have a lot of issues, but for 2 years in a row, it's the fastest growing economy in South America. That's not nothing. You know what I mean?
And by the way, we're hardly in a position to point fingers. I mean,
Yeah. You look
we
at
are, we are not in a position to really criticize how anybody's government runs things.
right. And the more you scrutinize a lot of these narratives that you hear, the more you find out that it has less to do with Maduro than anything. So you hear a lot of people claim, "Oh, he's killed 20,000 people." And that's not true. Like Maduro didn't go out and execute 20,000 people. They have the same systemic issues we have in policing, only theirs is 3 times as bad. So per
Hmm.
capita, they're killing 3 times as many people as we are every year. And, you know, those are just issues that aren't being addressed. Can you fault Maduro for that? Yeah. And you should fault the legislature, the mayors, the local prosecutors, and every other corrupt motherfucker up and down the line, because corruption in the public sector in Venezuela is a thing. It's a huge deal. But, you can't there's a lot of people that point to the corruption, and they'll say the oil revenue is not making it to the people. And, the Washington office on Latin America in DC, they're not necessarily left wing at all. They're more right wing, if anything. And they've done analysis on Venezuela's money, and they were like, yeah, that's just a flat out lie. A lot of their money goes towards importing food, goods, medicine, any other things they need that go directly to the people. So yeah, there's a lot of these narratives. Like I said, if you just scratch the surface and dig a little bit further down, you start seeing that they draw these weird connections that don't really make any sense. So like if we wanted to, okay, on average over the last 10 years, I looked this up. Police have killed 1,300 people a year. That's 13,000 in 10 years. Is that our president's fault? Every president during those 13 years? Are we blaming Donald Trump for these things? No, but what happened in Minneapolis, we can point to Donald Trump because that's a state sponsored, state sanctioned extrajudicial killing on his order. All of these policies, all this abuse, the deaths in detention centers, the overcrowdedness, the lack of food and healthcare, all that stuff, those were ordered directly by the White House. So if you're going to pin these things on people like Maduro or Iran's leadership or North Korea, let's apply the same rules at home and see what happens. Because if
Hmm.
that's the case, Donald Trump is responsible so far, just based on ICE data, over 100 people, 100 deaths. If you count the in detention deaths, the deaths like at the pot farms in California,
Right.
if you start adding those up, it starts to rack up pretty fast. So he openly said in his executive order that he was unleashing the police and unleashing ICE on America. This is the result of that. So I mean,
Mm.
if you're gonna pin dictators with these things, then let's pin our dictator too. You know what I mean? Why not? Um, and I just think if you scratch the surface on what we do in the U.S., you'll find more connections to the president than you would if you scratch the surface on what goes on in Venezuela and tying it to Maduro or Chavez or legislature, people in the
Hmm.
legislature or whatever. So I mean, yeah, Venezuela has a lot of issues, but it's not what it's being portrayed here in the US. And in the last year, when you hear all these narratives that Trump was creating about being head of Tren de Agua, Cartel de los Soles, you see how
Yeah.
easy a narrative can be put together.
Oh yeah.
And you see how, like, the FBI and Department of National Intelligence, DNI, both of them switched their narrative, ignored all previous data that didn't connect Venezuela or Maduro to anything, and said, yeah, he's this. And that highlights how easy it is for the government to just manufacture a narrative
Well, they've
and
got
tell
the
the
big
entire.
microphone. I saw today, and this is you bring up the um, eh, the intelligence apparatus. I saw that I guess for months they've excluded Tulsi Gabbard from all the planning because she was not on board with this. I mean, that was her whole thing. And so it is really interesting to me how willing they are to just straight up, not even really good lie. Just, I mean, the story has changed since Saturday, even.
Right. That's a good point.
So, yeah, it's, the other thing that's interesting to me too, and I guess maybe we can move on and talk about what happened yesterday in Minnesota. We can see what happened. And I'm hearing, oh, we hate that this person lost their life. However, however, so the same people that are saying she should have complied are the same people who are crying over Ashley Babbitt,
Yeah. Yeah.
who not only wasn't complying but was moving toward, you know, the conflict with the with 100 people behind her. But she's a victim, and this woman, her name, her name, last name's good. I don't know her full name, but she's a terrorist.
Yeah.
All she did was try to move her car out of the way.
Yeah. And that's domestic terrorism.
And even if she was a terrorist, hell, Timothy McVeigh got a trial.
Yeah. No,
So
no
thank you,
kidding.
Renee Nicole Good.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I say her name. But yeah, so it's just they just don't have any credibility, and I feel like time will tell, and I've said it before and been wrong, but something like this, that's so obviously wrong, I just feel like, there are those moments that are kind of the tipping point, and I just don't feel like this is one that's gonna go away, and I think they know it because, it started off, they've excluded the state from the investigation now.
Yeah.
So
And I don't want to sound crass, but it's not going to go away. They killed a white woman.
a
It wasn't an immigrant this time. It
dude,
wasn't a
a
brown woman.
American citizen and a
Yeah,
white
a
one.
US citizen, right. Right. And I hope it doesn't go away. I hope this is the catalyst that finally brings ICE and Border Patrol down, because it was a BORTAC unit agent, which is Border Patrol Tactical Unit.
Yeah, this guy had been with
They
him for
are,
a while, right? I mean, he
excuse
wasn't
my
new.
French. Yeah, no, excuse my French, but they are fucking violent. That was one of the most violent agencies we have. Border Patrol itself is violent, and they're on the streets. And the thing that gets me is Border Patrol knows how to push the limits of legality and get away with it. They have, I don't know if you saw the documentary on Max that Jen Budd is in.
No, I haven't.
They
What's
have this,
just for folks who don't know, what's the name of it?
off the top of my head.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, man.
No,
we'll
but
we'll put a link in the show notes.
yeah, they had or they might still have them, the critical incident teams. And whenever Border Patrol would kill somebody or something like that, these critical incident teams came in there and mopped up the whole crime scene. So by the time the cops got there, there was no crime scene. And when you saw what happened in the shooting in Minnesota, that's exactly what happened. They moved the body, they picked up bullet casings, they tried to manipulate the scene as much as possible. So by the time the authorities get there, they don't know what they're looking at. And
The
that's
problem that they have in this case is it's recorded from so many different angles.
right, right.
You
And
know?
the thing that bothers me about Border Patrol being part of these raids is that there are also thousands of agents from every other federal agency like the DEA, ATF,
Hmm.
FBI. They're seeing how Border Patrol gets away with stuff. They're going to start doing it. There's no rolling this back. You know what I mean? When these guys start saying, "Oh, if I just do this and this, I can get away with murder," they might just keep doing it, When testifying became a big thing with cops, where they testify to ensure conviction because they believe the suspect should be locked up whether he's guilty or not. That became a thing, and every cop does it, and there's no denying it. Cops will lie under oath. These guys are going to do the same thing. With this ICE agent will be withheld for 72 hours, won't be allowed to talk to any law enforcement. Will put together a narrative with his union representative based on all these videos we're all posting, and then by the time they go talk to investigators, he is going to lie his ass off about what happened, because he is going to be trained, he's going to be schooled on the whole thing, and he'll have a script when he goes to finally talk to investigators. And
Hmm.
that's the common problem we see between all of policing in this country. It's in police union contracts that, a cop involved in a homicide or whatever won't be allowed to talk to investigators for 72 hours. And it's just the level of unaccountability in this country is just crazy. The protections they have are never afforded to us. You know what I mean? You see what they did? They shot
Well, you see, JD Vance is saying that the guy had unlimited immunity, and it's like, wait a minute, dude, no, he doesn't.
right. And that's another thing that implicates Donald Trump. The White House has been telling all these agents that they're immune from prosecution. They're not. They don't No one in the White House seems to understand what qualified immunity is. And once you violate someone's civil rights, you no longer have qualified immunity. And in most cases, that's it goes away. Qualified immunity goes away the minute you violate someone's civil rights. So as long as you can prove that, you can ditch qualified immunity. And I don't know why they think that these guys are all immune, but they aren't, and they have been telling them this since the beginning of the year. So if you're running around there and you're already from a violent agency like Bortac, and they're telling you you're immune, yeah, citizens going to end up getting shot in the face, and that's where we are. I'm tired of hearing that fascism is creeping in. Like fascism kicked the door in, you
We're
know.
well past that.
Yeah,
Well past
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So, just before we got on, I saw something that it's really interesting to me, and this is related to the ACA subsidies. It looks like at least in the House they, passed this discharge petition with 17 Republicans jumping on board. Um, I feel like some folks probably got a talking to over the holidays when they had to go home.
Look, the way I see it is, yeah, that's probably what happened. But credit where credit is due, Democrats finally did something. This is what I've been saying they need to do. Go get a handful of Republicans. It can't be that hard. You know what I mean? To go and just
Well,
have
I just think
shit out
like
of them.
I agree with you. I think it's just that the difference in now and a month ago is these guys have been at home. And
That's true.
if you're in Oklahoma or Mississippi or any of these red states, I mean that's where all of the people on Obamacare are predominantly, if I'm not mistaken. If you're in New York, guys can say what they want, but but they had to be hearing it.
No, I'm sure. You weren't. We went up to East Texas for the holiday for Christmas, and that's a lot of what everybody was talking about.
Mm.
They were so scared about their doubling their insurance rate. And there's that's a thing. You can't just go back to rural America where poverty's a big thing in most of rural America, and people are dependent on Medicaid and they're dependent on Obamacare and all these things, and they I'm sure they got an earful, especially in the small towns. So when it came, come time to today to do the vote, yeah, I can see why they switched sides. And right now I mean, they're getting pounded by MAGA.
Well, you got to think about it this way too, man. I have known about discharge petitions, but we've had two different discharge petitions work their way through the House. What, in the last 60 days? I can't remember before that. I can't remember one ever happening. Maybe so, but I mean that just really
It has been a
it,
while.
it's so interesting to me. Mike Johnson, he's got to be the worst speaker that we've ever had. I used to think John Boehner was weak.
Yeah.
This guy, it's just I don't. Where is he? I don't even see him.
I mean, at least John Boehner was kind of funny at times.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
And
I
I
don't.
think
I
he
really.
was really trying to wrangle. It was like herding cats because he had to deal with the Tea Party guys and trying to keep her. But that's not what this is. This is
Oh,
like they don't really have any respect for this guy at all.
yeah, and I don't know what rock he came out of from Louisiana, but all the Cajuns I've ever met have a lot more, a little more aggressive about themselves,
Yeah,
a little more,
yeah. I
confident.
mean, I'm from Arkansas, so I've been around my share of Cajuns, and I don't know where this guy fits in, but
No,
he is a very unimpressive speaker, and will
yeah,
probably go down in history as such.
right. They couldn't have found a more bland person to be speaker. Like, I
Well,
mean,
and a more malleable one. I think he's
yeah,
exactly the guy that Trump wanted. So in effect, Trump is the speaker and the president.
that's scary. But yeah,
Yeah, it is.
he is. He is. And it's also scary how many Republicans won't do anything that goes against Trump, no matter how wrong or how right it is. Like Pablo Manriquez on Migrant Insider here on Substack just broke right before we went live, just posted an article, a scoop from the Senate, and they're seeking a 10% funding increase for ICE. And I'm just blown away by this. Like, you just
I mean, that's pretty ballsy to even bring up ICE right now. But that's got to be coming from Trump.
it gotta be, right? Like, it doesn't that's what I mean. Like, these guys have to be so far up his butt that we need more funding for ICE. And I think it was John Thune that told Pablo or someone up there that they needed the money to maintain operational capacity or something. I'm like, come on, man, you just got 170 billion
I
dollars.
mean, there. What else? next to the Pentagon, ICE has got to be second, right? In terms of
Gotta
funding.
be. I mean, gotta be. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but they're more funded than some militaries on.
Oh, I can
I don't
believe
doubt
it.
it. I don't doubt it. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, it's just the amount of money that they're giving ICE, the amount of money ICE is spending, DHS is spending. It's just ridiculous. You see what ICE is doing, and I kind of give Trump a little credit because had he not spent $200 million on propaganda video to do propaganda, we wouldn't see a lot of the stuff we're seeing.
Mm.
Um, and they're running around with film crews and stuff like that.
Like the January 6th folks, right?
Dude, yeah, and I mean,
I,
you have agents acting like they're filming a movie or something. You know what I mean? And
I mean, some
you
of
know,
these episodes that I have seen, it's almost like the event had nothing to do with well, it was done specifically so they could film themselves doing it. It's almost like they're staging these events, as I don't know, man, violence porn or whatever you want to call it, but it's crazy. And I suspect, I mean, look, that's the kind of stuff their base likes, but it's also documenting just what these guys are,
yeah,
you
it's
know.
documenting atrocity, and all that video will be, is subject to FOIA right now. But at some point, you put Democrats in power, and that video is going to be public.
That's going to be evidence.
Right. If Democrats do get power, it better be public. Like we
Let me
need to
tell you
see it.
something. We're not going to, I think we are so far past we just want to get things back to normal. That whole
Yeah.
episode that we went through with Biden. Um, no, I just think if they don't recognize we're not having that, they're not they're not going to get reelected. My sense, just on and this might be a whole lot more wishful thinking than actual evidence, but I feel like guys like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries should probably start getting their shit together
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't know who, but the behavior, these guys are still scared to say Mondani's name.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what they're looking at, and I understand that there's money and so on, but I mean, come on, how weak can you be?
I don't understand what it is they're hanging on to. You know, life changes. Everything
Well,
changes.
they're these guys. You've heard the expression. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
Oh no, go
I'm
ahead.
actually kind of passionate about this. These people are living. They're fighting the last war. Okay,
Yeah.
they're still in the Bill Clinton era where you didn't want to actually be called a liberal. You know, you didn't, and you damn sure don't want to be called a progressive. They're so worried about what Republicans think of them. Okay, and they're so worried or concerned about trying to recapture, you know, these folks that voted for Obama one time, damn near 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is the
Yeah.
stupidest thing I've ever seen. In the meantime, we got millions of young people that are just waiting to be spoken to.
Yeah.
And Mamdani spoke to them.
Right. The thing
And you
with
see
too
what
about it
happened.
is,
That's
I
all we
mentioned,
do. That's all we got to do.
yeah, I mention this all the time, man. Chuck Schumer first got into Congress the same year I was born. I was 51.
Wow.
I'm
What?
51. I'll be 52 in February. Yeah. And
Woo. I didn't know you'd
that,
been around that long.
how does that guy speak to today's youth? He got into office in 1974. We are
And man, look,
2026, my guy.
I'm way older than you, and I have an advantage, and it is this. I have my two youngest children are in their early 20s.
Yeah.
So I've got a pipeline into, you know, I'm not going to say that, I got some special sauce, but I just know how that particular cohort looks at things. I know what my son in college is concerned about. I know what my daughter who just got out of college is concerned about and the fears they have. And, Chuck Schumer can't talk to anybody without a piece of paper in his hand.
Right.
So they are looking for something way more in tune with what their concerns are, and these are not crazy concerns, man. All they think about it. If you're 25 now, you've never known like good government, really, right?
Yeah.
You got people laughing at me in the background.
No, that's my grandson. My grandson just showed up. He just come walking in here.
But no, you know what I'm saying, man? It's like, my daughter was born, what, just a couple of years after 9/11. So you just figure blackouts,
Right.
housing crisis, COVID, just one thing after another. And they've really never experienced anything but Trump. My daughter can kind of remember Obama. She was pretty young still. My son, he knows Obama was the president, but he was just barely a toddler, or a little bit more than that. So all they've ever known is this shit.
Yeah, my kids are my two youngest are in their early 20s. My oldest is 28. And my oldest has kids, and you talk to them, and you hear their concerns and the cost of housing and owning a car and all these things, and it's just too much. My oldest just bought a house a few months ago, and man, it cost an arm and a leg to get in there. It was
Mm,
a lot of money. It was a tremendous amount of money, and it's just crazy to see them working. Two jobs in their house. My son's a master mechanic, makes great money, but he's still
mhm.
struggling. They're
Oh,
still
one of
struggling.
my sons, my oldest son is 39. He didn't go the college route. He went the trade school route. So
Right.
he's, licensed welder, sheetrock, gets a ton of work, military facilities and stuff like that all over the country. I mean, the guy will, I'll look up and he's in the Arctic Circle working on something. He can't even tell me what it is, that kind of thing. He still can't afford to buy a house and he gets paid well.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
So it's well, I say he can't afford it. He hasn't bought one. I would assume if he could do it, he would, you know.
Man, I
But it's like he's just staying afloat.
yeah. I traveled to do government work for a long time, and I did that because the money was so good.
Right.
And even though we didn't have it as easy as our parents did, it was a whole lot easier for me back then, 15, 20 years ago than it is now. It's just insane.
Yeah, it's an
I look at
impossibility, really.
right.
And
I mean, you look at the price of ground beef, $4 or $5 a pound. I'm like, it's ground beef, man. What do you $5 a pound? I used to pay that for ribeye. You know what I mean? Like, what the
so
heck?
so I got one for you. Well, my wife told me this. I did not see it with personally. She was at we have Harris Teeter, which is like the sort of upscale. It's part of the Kroger franchise. I got a bottle of Woodford Reserve for Christmas, and I have these, where you can make the little round ice balls.
Yeah, yeah.
At Harris Teeter, they were selling, hold on, what was it, 8 of those? Six. We're talking about ice, $8.
Ice?
Ice.
What the?
I was like, well, did the little thing that you can make no, it was just ice, but it was the round, the kind you use maybe in a mixed drink.
What?
Yeah, that's where we are, dude. Oh, she said it was packaged as slow melting ice. So that actually makes a difference.
Super ice.
Yeah. So last
Man.
thing, and then we'll talk about, our individual, um, do a little bit of shameless promotion. um, I guess it was Monday. The the IPO, it's actually a spinoff of NBC Universal, Comcast. So that's MS Now, CNBC, E, and a few other channels, cable channels, basically have spun out That's why MSNBC, now it's MS Now. They had to change their name and drop the NBC part because they're no longer part of NBC. And what happened, I think, and I actually posted something just maybe an hour ago about this. So when they were marketing the deal, I don't know who the bankers were, but they marketed, it's a cash flow business because they have subscribers to all these different, channels and so on. They marketed that spinoff as having a market cap potentially of close to $10 billion. So the first day that the stock traded, I think it was down 15%. The market cap, I believe at that point, or when it opened for trading the very first day, it was just under 7 billion. It ended the day like maybe around 6. Last time I looked, the market cap is, and that's on the close today, the market cap is less than 5 billion. So it has shed that much in value. And the way I look at it is that's good news for people like us that are doing what we're doing, because I think, and it's not because of cash flow, it's not because it's not going to be profitable, because they got subscribers. I mean, they still got millions of subscribers, so they've got reach. But what they don't have is trust. Nobody trusts what these guys, even, and I hate to say it, even MSNBC. I do not trust everything they say. I see some of the guys that they bring on as experts. I listen to what they're saying. And look, I'm not smarter than all these people, but I know a little bit. So when they're talking, when they come into my wheelhouse, I know what I'm hearing isn't quite what, like we were talking about Venezuela. They have just adopted the narrative that we had the right to go do this. Nobody is really saying America is fucking up here. They just won't say it. Um, so I think when you see it used to be a spinoff like this, the market would love it because it would be, it's instant cash flow, it's legacy business. And now all those things that used to be the positive are now the negative. And by the way, that's the reason that it got spun off in the first place, because, that terrestrial and cable media just isn't as valuable as it once was. And these guys, and what's left, NBC Universal is saying, hey, we got the infrastructure game, we got all these other things. We don't need this headache. And people are running away from it's called Versant now. I think the symbol is VSNT if you want to take a look. But if you look at that chart, dude, it's just doing this. And it's only been a few days, not even a solid week. So when I look at that, it kind of encourages me as a person out here, doing what we do. And I just hope, as we gain momentum, people will understand that it's not that hard to support what we're doing. It's $50 a year to support my newsletter. And I assume you're kind of in the same ballpark. And you just get a lot more. Look, get off of this stream, folks in the audience, and go in and text Katie Tur and and hold your breath, see when you get an answer. I mean, we engage with the people who support us. I had an hour-long phone call with one of my founding members a couple of days ago. Just, I mean, it didn't start out, it wasn't for that particular purpose, but I basically gave him an hour's worth of a download of, kind of what I think is going on in finance. I mean, I'm not a Wall Street guy anymore, but I know the game enough to be able, I put it this way. Um, I used to charge people $500 an hour for that call. Those were the good old days. Those were the pre-COVID days.
I gotta go. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not charging you, man. But I'm just saying, we offer a service, and I think our hearts are in the right place. And I'm talking now not just about me and you, but just the broader community of people that, are out here. just folks that are doing us the service of reading through the Epstein files and reporting on it.
Yeah.
You doing what you're doing with regard to, just keeping, um, the administration honest in terms, and so what's happened reminds me so much of what happened 20 years ago on Wall Street, where, and that's what gave me the ability to run a small trading desk. 10 years before that, there was no way I could have done it. But now what's happened is this technology has been democratized, and for not that much money, we can put together, we can put together a product that does a service and looks as professional as what you see when you turn on television. And we're a lot more honest. I'll be the first to tell you shit I don't know about. If I don't know the answer, I'm glad to tell you.
Yeah.
But
I'm the same
turns
way.
out most of the time I do know the answer. So so anyway, I mean, all that to say, folks, if you can support us by becoming paid subscribers, um, certainly Arturo, and there are any number of other folks out here that are doing the same thing and doing it well. And I just think it's, when you see what happened to this spinoff, it's a huge signal that
Yeah.
the market is moving away from legacy media and maybe moving towards, creator led
Right.
media. I just think that's what's happening.
Yeah, decentralized media, that's what Unicorn Ride is, and it's one of the reasons why I can work well with them because it's a decentralized setup. There's no unified newsroom.
Hmm.
When you have editorial
Well, you don't need it now, though. You
conversations.
can have a virtual newsroom, you know?
Right, right, and it works. It works really well. Um, yeah, we're our content, and to borrow a phrase, I'm pretty sure I stole from you. Is in a world where misinformation is free and the truth is behind paywalls,
Hmm.
our content is free because of that.
Yep.
So even
You
if you
must have been
can't,
listening to one of my lectures, man.
maybe,
No, I actually did. I guess it was about this time last year. I did a talk at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I do it a couple of times a year for the business school, and the one I did this time last year was about misinformation, and it's almost always free,
yeah,
and it's just the perverse outcome of paywalls, where
right,
New York Times, whatever you think of them, there is a part of the New York Times that I depend on for decent reporting. Same thing with the Washington Post. I don't like the overall, but
right,
it, for guys like us, it's necessary to be able to get at certain information, but it costs money. So what I try to do is, yeah, I subscribe to a lot of these so folks don't have to. And when I write about it, I try to give as many gift links as I can. Unfortunately, Bloomberg doesn't, you really got to know somebody to get a gift link out of Bloomberg. But,
yeah,
yeah, I just think that's the service we provide that you're never going to see from the legacy folks. Even the ones that have left legacy media behind, there's a certain amount, at a certain level, you got to pay either. I mean, and there's one in particular, I've seen guys charging $100 a year.
yeah.
And I'm like, boy, what are they telling you for, what are you getting for that?
Yeah, and the thing with legacy media too, like the Times and the Post, is they have access to
Well, yeah,
those,
that's
right?
it.
Still. So we have to rely on them for, certain data points and news stories and usually just the facts because I'm not interested in the New York Times' propaganda. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah. I
interested in
mean,
the
I am
Washington
not looking
Post.
to the New York Times, the editorial board. I never read what they
Right.
say.
Yeah, you just filter through the nonsense. It was the AP and the Washington Post that initially reported on the Venezuela election, and it was the paragraph in each one of those that said that they couldn't validate the authenticity of the data that got me looking. And then most people they buried that halfway down the article. Most people it probably went in one ear and out the other. But when I read that, And then I saw it again in the post. I'm like, well, there's got to be something here. There's got to be a reason why it can't be validated. And I looked at it and I found out why. Um, is it valid? I don't, like I said, when it comes to Venezuela election, I still don't know as much as I dug into that thing. But yeah, I mean, we have to rely on legacy media for some things because they will always have access. You know, a lot of people don't know that they could come to somebody like me or you with a breaking story, so they'll take it to the Times. You know,
Hmm.
maybe it needs more attention, and I recommend taking it to the Times or the Post to get the eyes on it. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's still a utility to legacy media. The problem is it worth paying for? You
Right.
know, and that's what it comes down to. You know, a lot of like what the complaints you were talking about with like MS Now, for example, it's not that they outright lie. It's just they lie by omission. Right? They
Well,
leave a
yeah.
certain
I
part.
mean, and they will accept narratives. They ignore, um, they some stories they just don't chase, right? And look, as important as the Epstein files are, certainly no disrespect to anybody involved, but that's not the only thing going on. And
Right.
a lot of what you tend to get is one show after another, just kind of repeating the same stuff. So you're not really, at a certain point, you're not receiving anything substantive. And
Right.
Ellie Leonard, somebody mentioned, she's certainly doing more than they are, you know, and
Right.
and another thing, and I know you've experienced this, and we can close out. A lot of these folks are looking at our work and just repackaging it. I
Right.
have seen things that I've written about that look eerily familiar, and they pop up on some columnists, especially market related stuff or economy,
Yeah.
stuff related to the economy. And I know that's happened to you. I mean, so
Yeah.
anyway, that's a very long winded answer or way to ask folks to become paid subscribers.
Hey man,
Anyway,
we do the work. We're diligent, you know what I mean? And we try to explain everything to people the way it needs to be explained, you know, try not to leave out any context. We want to make sure everybody we contextualize the news is what we do. And I think that's extremely important now because
yeah,
they
I
could
think it is.
easily yeah, they could drive false narratives without that context.
Well, and like I said earlier, I just feel like from the way the planets seem to be lining up, um, this is as good of an opportunity because people always say, "Well, where's the left side?" Where? Well, this is it. It's not gonna You're not gonna find it on cable or on legacy media. I mean, we're the ones you've been looking for. Still, I'll steal that from Obama. So anyway, it's a little after 7. I guess this is it, man. And I'm gonna, the only downside of doing this show this time of day is it's dinner time,
Yeah.
and I can smell the Brunswick stew that's sitting right over here. So
Yeah, we got some dinner going here too.
yeah, man. So anyway, I'm gonna move on to the next phase, which is dinner. And
Me too.
I'll see you next Thursday, man, on a show with no name.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, take care.
Bye, y'all.
All right, bye bye.